I'm well, thank you very much. A little bit wet, a little bit windswept. Not that you could tell because I don't have any hair, but yeah, it's minging outside. To use the raining, sideways rain, proper mank weather it is.
I'll kick us off then. What is the injury latest from the weekend? A few players going off with injuries, and also what's the latest in terms of players that have been in England squad? I know Tom Robart's back training with the squad this week, training with Sale this week rather than with England. Do you know whether any of the 5 remaining will be available this week or not?
Have they called the England squad yet?
They've announced that Curry, Johnny and Manu will be staying.
Right, okay, yeah. So I'm just conscious of the fact that sometimes we get privy to information that's not released to the public, and I don't want to get myself in trouble. So Tom obviously has been back, so he's up for selection, and Rafi and Bev are on their way back and are also up for selection for this weekend. What could have been an horrendous day, not just in terms of result and, not taking those ops from the weekend. In terms of injuries, like you said, there's a lot of people hobbling around. There have been about 5 or 6 with rolled ankles who were question marks on Monday. I'm glad to say that all but Simac have come through in terms of the ankles, and Flats has broken his face. Everyone else seems really positive. So, yeah, in respect to being able to have a pretty much full squad to pick from, we're there or thereabouts. Still question marks over Aka and JL, but again, they're out there training today. We'll see how they'll pull up tomorrow, regards to their ankles. So, about 8 ankle niggles, and they are only niggles.
What is the time scale for the likes of Simon McIntyre and Tomo Flatty? What's the exact nature of their injuries?
I couldn't tell you on Flats. I need to speak to him. It generally doesn't take that long for broken jaws to heal, like 6 weeks, get wired up, and then you're back into it. Simac, I think, is a grade 1 to 2, so he should be back for the Bristol game, up for selection for that. Flats maybe a couple of weeks after.
In terms of the wider point about artificial 4G pitches, it's kind of a 2-part question, really. Firstly, do you think it's appropriate that we should be playing on artificial surfaces when you look at the number of injuries? Granted, perhaps we've gotten away with a few in terms of they could be more serious and they're not. Do you think there's an issue with artificial surfaces in terms of the increase in risk of injury? And the second part of the question is, do you think there's an unfair advantage to the 3 clubs, Saracens, Gloucester, Newcastle, who play on artificial surfaces? So they play as many as 13 of the 20 league games on artificial surfaces, whereas for everyone else it's only 3 games. Do you think there's an unfair advantage for those sides that do play on the artificial surfaces every home game?
To answer your first question about potential for increased injury, I think there's loads of studies out there, Kieran. It's a relatively contentious issue for me to throw my 2 pence in, because it would be on a feeling. And with this, I think you have to look into the science of it. So I'm not even going to give comment really. You'd have to look at the frequency and the extent to the injuries that are received in those pitches. This weekend was a bit of a freak. What we do know is the forces you can generate are greater, the speeds are higher, and to some degree there's less give. We know all of that. So bigger guys or people with pre-existing injuries on those pitches tend to feel the effects of the increased loading that's sustained through playing on those pitches. But there's, like I say, the severity and the frequency, I can't give comment on. It's just, this is one of those freak weekends. Is it an unfair advantage? I think any home ground is and should be an advantage. It's probably a greater advantage because, as I say, the game is slightly different, a little bit quicker, and the ball bounces a bit different. But I wouldn't say it's any greater advantage than what Welford Road have with their supporters and how they influence. Or down at Exeter, you know, with that wind that blows right to left, like you get used to that. So, it's not unfair, it's just an advantage. And everyone who has their own ground should work as much advantage as they can to give them every opportunity they can to make it their home and a bit of a cauldron or a bastion or a place where the other teams don't want to come. Just coming back to that, we're talking about the physical advantage it might add. Within every home ground, there's a greater psychological element to the venue than there is a physical, I think. And for most visiting teams, that's what you've got to master over the speed of the game and the bounce of the ball. In
terms of, obviously, you mentioned a few of the players that were in Jersey last week with the England squad are available this week. I know from fans on social media that there was a bit of frustration that kind of seeing the England players enjoying themselves, having a good time, probably team bonding is probably the phrase that the England rugby would use, that they weren't available last weekend, and at a time where rugby is under the spotlight because of off-field issues and that therefore there's a bigger spotlight on rugby. I know there's some fans that are frustrated that England didn't have a game last weekend and no players, not just Sale players, none of that squad, 36-man squad, were available last weekend.
Yeah.
Is there frustration from your end that this isn't just for Sale but for every club, that players weren't available last weekend, that they were being seen as, whether this is fair or unfair, on a bit of a jolly? I'm sure that's probably unfair, but last week and didn't have a game and they weren't playing for their clubs at a time where rugby's really under the spotlight.
I can understand why there is frustration. I can empathise with spectators. But this was always part of the deal. This was always part of the bargain. You know, we sign up to this in terms of EPS players and we get paid for them. And I know some clubs think we don't get paid enough. That might be the case, but we get to rewrite that contract after this World Cup. Everyone signed up to it. Everyone knows the deal going into it. So when it happens, you can't turn back and say, why aren't they released? Like it's an understood and agreed upon contract. Then there's the other, you know, like taking a Sale hat on and putting my English hat on, England hat on. Like, I want them to win a World Cup. You know, I want them to, and for that they need to get load managed, which they are. This is part of the load managing. They need to bond, and that's staying in camp and staying in that environment because every environment's different. So it undoubtedly, because Eddie Jones has formed this agreement, he believes, and his group of staff believe, that this is the best arrangement, given the time they have, to get the best out of this group for the nation. So, well, I can see it from his point of view as well.
You mentioned Rafi and Bevan, I think, are both available this week. Is it a bit of a tough one in terms of whether they start, whether on the bench, because obviously they were away last week in Jersey, so they haven't trained for over a week with Sale. Is that therefore a tougher decision, even though they're top players? Is that a tougher decision as to whether they start this weekend because they haven't trained with Sale for a week or two?
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is a factor in terms of selection, but also, you know, with them being young lads, and pretty mature young lads, obviously, they wouldn't be there if they weren't collected and they didn't know their own minds. They wouldn't be in that environment. But it does have its effect, regardless of how good that is and how good it is here. It's just a shift and a change in cultures. So it takes some teething going from one to the other, and mental strain, and as an effect, as it would on any human being, just the change causes stress. So we take all those factors into account, as well as the loading, the wellness, the psychological factors, and the fact they haven't trained. All those things are taken into account upon selection, yeah.
On another note, you were pretty honest last week about discussions you were having with now formerly Wasps players, and saying that nothing at that point was close or imminent. As we're a week later, is anything any closer in terms of bringing players in immediately this season?
Yes.
Any expansion on that, or are you being told that's the line, that's it?
I've got two people doing like neck chopping movements behind the camera, so you'll have to wait. You'll have to wait and see.
Be out this week, Kieran.
Be out this week. That's what they're saying. It's out this week.
Is it more than one?
There'll be one out this week, and they may well be more than one.
There's a few.
Terrific. You said, this was probably going back 3 or 4 weeks back, that you were set to have a chat with Manu. You hadn't had it, and go for your walk around Mac Forest. Have you had discussions with Manu? What's the state of play with him, his future at the moment? Yeah,
I have had a few conversations with a legend that is Manu, and we are trying, and will continue to try our best endeavours to keep him at the club. All the same hurdles, obstacles around salary cap and our ability to keep him because of salary cap and forward planning of salary cap, because we want to keep all our young lads as well, and the lads who are coming through are still there. What it is, this climate that we're in, the environment that we have, and the cap that is part of it, is ever changing. So it shifts wildly from like month to month. So we're just we're having recruitment meetings every week, and it's only to talk about the shift in salary cap and for how we can keep the people we want and love, and Manu's one of them. But at the moment, we can't put anything on the table that's worthy at the moment. But not to say that won't change.
I'm sure that you wouldn't want to put him under any sort of like time pressure. You have to make a decision now, or else we move on. But do you have a sort of time frame as to when you would ideally want to know the lay of the land, so that you can move on? But presumably it would open up quite a bit of salary cap if Manu were to decide to go and take up a mouth-watering contract elsewhere. Is there a sort of time frame you're looking at that ideally you would want to know either way where his head's at, so that you can then plan if the situation that you don't want to unfold is that Manu goes, that you then are prepared and have a plan in place? No,
look, he wants to stay, we want to keep him, right? We know that much. I've just explained to you that at the moment, that wasn't initially part of the plan, but it is now. As it currently stands, because of the forward planning, we're struggling to fit him into the cap. The longer this continues, the better chance we'll have in the shifting environment, potentially, to be able to retain his services. We're encouraging him to make sure that he gets as many of the offers on the table for him, so he chooses what's right for his career and his family. The time frame's on him, not us. We're not pressuring him to sign, because we want to be able to see what we can do, and time in that sense gives us more opportunity to see if we can find a way. But as it stands right now, we've got some work to do on it, hence why we're meeting every week.
Just one final one in terms of the wider point of recruitment you kind of touched on for next season. Have you got your plan in place in terms of targets as to who you want, and have you made any developments in terms of bringing players in on long-term deals from next season?
A lot of our recruitment revolves around retention of our existing players, almost all. and I'd love to keep them all, but you just can't with the decrease in salary cap and the increase in these young lads' wages. So at present, we're not actively recruiting anyone long term, and I say at present because the climate shifts week to week. We are providing opportunity for our lads that we have right now to make this their club of choice for the long term, and it's in these kind of windows, the autumn internationals and the Six Nations, where a lot of these boys can put their best foot forward and stake the claim.
Cheers, Alex. I'll pass it on to Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, Kieran. Cheers, mate.
Hi, Alex.
Hello, mate. You right?
Yeah, good. Just staying with this recruitment thing, Alex. I mean, you've lost two teams this season. They're talking about, reducing the Premiership next season to 11 or even 10, which I guess would free up more money because of the central monies aren't being paid to Worcester and Wasps anymore. Has anyone said anything about whether budgets for the other clubs would increase because of that, because there's only 11 mouths now rather than 13, which would take some of the pressure off you cap-wise?
No. I think it has been mentioned there's a few clubs who would like it to increase, but I don't think it's the majority. So the general, my understanding of the consensus is to make it a feasible, self-sustaining kind of business model, really. But that is, it's income over expenditure, isn't it? As far as I understand it, but I'm really bad with money. So yeah, from my understanding, it's to keep the salary caps where they are and increase the gates and the crowd attendance and the interest through a potentially 11 or 10 team league.
Yeah, so I guess if clubs do get the extra money, then the aim is for them, as you just say, to become sustainable. Use it to, spend in other areas or help pay off debts rather than just increase wages.
Yeah, and become more attractive to further investment.
Yeah.
That as well.
Yeah. But it's for someone like you, it's tough. You're producing a lot of young players who get capped by England or called up by England, Alex, which means their wages automatically will go up because their value increases, and that's, you're almost penalised for your own success.
Yeah, you become a product to your a victim of your own success. Sorry, yeah. You could do, but then I wouldn't have it any other way. You become more attractive to other young players because they can see a pathway through playing for your club to England that they know they're going to get promoted if they're good enough, despite how young they are. And our purpose is aligned with their purpose. They want to play for England, be right at the cutting edge and the pinnacle of the game, and we want them to get there. So it has to be aligned with these lads playing for England. Then you look into recruitment. You come back to recruitment about who your number twos are or what your squad looks like for when your internationals are away, and that requires in itself a little bit of forward planning and succession planning.
So I mean, two things there. One, should there be more provision in the cap for these young players who suddenly go from academy wages to senior player wages or almost?
I think that has to be the case. I think there should be more reward for clubs producing international players, or if not reward, certainly compensation's the wrong word, dispensation within regards to the cap, so you're able to get a wider squad. Because, as you say, you get punished almost for your own productivity. Otherwise, you just end up buying South Africans in, don't you? Or Argentinians, and you fill your ranks that way.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's a sort of disincentive.
Yeah.
I mean, Sanderson's found this, didn't they? When they produced all those young England players in one fell swoop, and up goes the wage bill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And the other thing, Alex, is because of potential reduction in fixtures, would that affect your squad size going forward, or would you look to keep it the same?
Reduction in Premiership fixtures. If they were to keep the Prem Cup in there, obviously the Champions Cup in there, I think it'd be roughly the same. From my understanding, it just allows you to play those international players in more of the Premiership fixtures, which should increase the gate. But you still need a decent sized squad to train against, to prep for, and for injuries.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to ask you, Alex, is looking at your fixtures, you've got Gloucester now on Saturday, and then I think you miss out on the next round.
Yeah.
And where are you? Then you've got Bristol, and you miss out on the next round again. So between now and the 23rd of December, you've got 2 league fixtures, which is a sort of long time for not much action. Is there anything you do in that time? Do you give players a week off? Or?
Yeah. Obviously, we're yet to cross the T's and dot the I's in terms of content, but some time off is a necessity, regardless, to freshen up. And then you can do like a mini pre-season, a reconditioning time, and I felt like we got a lot of that right in the pre-season as how we started. So we are not. The only thing that we're missing is obviously the revenue in terms of getting people through the gate, but in terms of preparation and conditioning, it gives us a real good opportunity to get them back up to speed and get rid of any niggles and get our game back on track. And it is hard to do that in the season because of the physical nature of the game. You tend to, a lot of teams, if you're not rotating, which we haven't much, there's a gradual slide in preparation, the physical preparation, just because of like there was this week, a lot of people carrying. So it gives you time to really go back to some of your fundamentals and work them hard. So we're quite excited as a club in our ability to have that time and to prep them for Bristol, as you said. We're going to go for Quins in the Prem Cup, no doubt. But Bristol, as you said, and then we've got Champions Cup after that. So that week off, where we would have played Wasps after the autumn internationals, gives our internationals a week to recover, which is dead important. And then we can go full bore into the Champions Cup and Christmas. What we've got to understand, it's overall loading in the season, which takes a strain at the end of the season, which is when you need to be hitting your straps. So whatever we miss out on at the moment, and seems like we're not getting enough game time to keep flow or whatever, they're going to be all the fresher for it come the business end.
Because of course they're talking about should the fixtures be changed in the new year?
Yeah.
Now that your 2 clubs like, and maybe sort of rearrange it so that there are fewer clashes during the Six Nations, for example, and then you can rearrange after that.
Yeah, that's some of the suggestions. Yeah.
Would you be in favour of that?
I would be in favour of it. For the many of the reasons that we spoke about, because you get your better players back and you should get better crowd attendance and better quality of games. But within it, in the shift in some of the fixtures, from some of the suggestions, some clubs don't come off well. They come off worse in terms of the run of fixtures. Yeah, so there's been some debates, on higher levels than I have influence in as to what's best for the club and what's best for the sport. That's been the ongoing debates.
Oh, I see. So so it's not. So it wouldn't be a level playing field, a rejig fixture list.
Everyone can take slight, can't they? And look into something and see the negatives. I'm looking into it, and you can make anything work with a decent enough attitude.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd probably look at. I'd like to think I'd look at it in the latter, with an optimistic.
Because I mean, your game last Sunday, at Saracens,
Yeah.
top two, ideally, all the best players to be available for that.
That would be the case. Yeah, that's what this 10-team or 11-team league is suggesting, and what the new fixture list will be promoting.
And it's second against third this weekend.
Yeah, bring it on. Yeah, but again, potentially they're missing most of the back line. Not that they'll be any less a team; they'll just have different players in there. But you want to see those backs playing, wouldn't you? Your Hastings and your Harris, and your Zamits, your Carreras. Yeah, there's a few there.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you, Alex.
Cheers, Paul.
On Saturday.
Thanks, lads. Next week.